All right. Good evening, everybody. Today is December 14th, 2022. It's a little after 6:20. We're going to convene a special meeting of the Brattleboro Select Board to conduct the second round of Charter Review Commission interviews. Patrick, was this meeting properly warned?
Yes, it was.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, folks. So this is round 2 of the Charter Review Commission interviews. We're going to conduct these interviews just like we did the first round. So I'll do a brief explanation. Before we even get into that, we've got the list here. I see Franz is on first already, which is good. Right after Franz, we're going to do Dave Gartenstein, who's remote today. Because he wasn't able to attend because he's not feeling well, we couldn't really put his name into the list. So if everyone's okay with that, we're going to just let him go so that he can rest once he's done, and then we'll go right back to this list, and we'll be able to turn the screen off and continue with the interviews. We've got just about 10 minutes per interview. You'll each get 2 questions, and there'll be the same questions for each candidate. And I'll have you start. You'll come up and you'll sit at the table. I'll have you start by just giving kind of a brief introduction to yourself. Maybe tell us a little bit about something that you didn't say in your letter if you wrote a lot in the letter, because we've all reviewed those. And then after the 2 questions, if there's any time left, we'll give you an opportunity to ask a question or 2 of the select board. So, and I just remind you that when you're answering your questions, the Charter Review Commission exists both basically can discuss things within the 4 corners of the document of the charter, or if it decides, it can move way beyond the 4 corners of that document and can be considering much more broad questions about Brattleboro governance. And so the questions that you're going to hear tonight, you really could answer them considering it in both ways. And I just wanted to make sure you all were aware of that when you're thinking about your answers. So with that, I invite the first candidate, Dr. Franz Reischman, up to the special table.
Very special.
Very special.
Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, welcome. All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself. I live here in Brattleboro. I've lived here for a long time, and I've participated in different aspects of town government from time to time, representative town meeting, and as being on the finance committee for a 5-year period. So I feel relatively comfortable with how town government works and different aspects of the decision making.
Excellent. Thank you. First question. Liz?
Oh, me?
I believe you're the first, right?
Well, okay. What do you hope to accomplish, Franz,
No. She's
by participating in this town charter committee?
Well, I think it's what the whole Charter Commission needs to accomplish that's really important, which is to review and offer strategies for solidifying or improving town government. I think what I personally can bring to that is familiarity with how town government has been working, feeling that it's been working pretty well overall. Not to say that there aren't some things that there's some housekeeping things in the charter that clearly need to be addressed, but there are also potential substantive questions. I don't have in mind any major revision for how town government works, but I'd be open to hearing what ideas other people have. But I really think Brattleboro has a good, solid structure, and that things are going well. There's bumps in the roads, there's this and that, and essentially I think I would bring a relatively moderate point of view, but one that's open to listening and considering things that other people have in mind.
Thank you.
Is there a particular housekeeping point that you have in mind?
No, not really. I mean, as in preparation for this interview, I actually read the town charter, and there's things that are things that are out of date, and
Yeah.
and things about the school board that don't apply anymore, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Great. You'd think that I would have cleaned up this question by now, but we've been busy with other things, so.
Well, no,
I
it should
will
be exactly the same as the last
present
time.
it as messily as I did last time. Franz, it's likely you'll have disagreements and differences of opinion, that's the same thing, about the ideas that you're all discussing and also the process. So there's, gonna be some conflict maybe. How would you handle that? And if possible, give examples from your work.
Well, I think sarcasm and brute force are the main things, although maybe leavened with a little bit of humor. There's probably going to be disagreements among different participants, and you get through those by listening closely and thinking and reflecting and being collegial and serious about the process. I don't have any specific examples in mind. Is there something you're anticipating or particularly curious about that you think the Charter Commission might bump into?
I don't know about like the substance of what you guys would discuss, but I would imagine that a commission of 7 people dealing with something as large as this, document will have really different opinions on how to go about it. And you guys aren't going to be given a path on how to go about your work. You're going to build that yourselves, and so that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I polish my badge here a little bit, but I think I'm pretty good at that stuff. I have to leave here now to go chair the meeting of the board of directors of the Brattleboro Tennis Club, which is, small potatoes, you could say, but there's plenty of potential for disagreement, and we work through it, and we've got a very, very good functioning board, and so I feel comfortable in that situation, and I do think I'm a good listener, and I do think I can reflect and work with other people, yeah.
Do your meetings also go to 11 o'clock at night?
Happily, no, and as you know, I've had some suggestions about that for the select board, but
Yes.
we'll bring that up another time.
Yeah. Board, any other follow-up questions for Franz?
Thank you.
Franz, I know you've got to go, but do you have any questions for the select board?
I don't think so. I think everybody's curious about how you're going to do your end of this appointing business, but I don't expect you to, I don't need to hear that, and I'll be satisfied with whatever the process
I can
is.
speak to it very briefly, though, that, basically, once we're done with this round of interviews, we have an executive session for after this meeting to kind of just discuss the process and questions about the 2 rounds, and then, like any committee, we'll do a public, clunky a nomination process. I don't know if you've seen it before for the community safety review. Like, we kind of go through this round where you nominate everybody you want to nominate, and then there's rounds of voting until you get enough votes to move on and till we fill it to 7. And that's kind of the.
Super fun.
Yeah, and I don't know if there will be much discussion. It'll be kind of up to the board if there's a lot of discussion during that, or if we'll just vote. I can't really speak for the rest of my board members. So.
Okay. Well, you have my full confidence in this process.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Franz, and thank you very much for your application.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so as I discussed, we're gonna move to Dave.
Can I see that?
Yes, absolutely.
I'd like to write them down. Thank you.
David.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yes, we can hear you.
see.
You're a little low. If we could just bop it up a little bit. Here, say something again.
I'm at maximum now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's on our end.
That's on our end.
yeah.
Yep.
Have them keep talking.
Yep. Just keep talking to us for a second.
I can yell if you need me to, but I prefer not to.
I think that's.
No, that's a fine
That's fine.
volume.
That's a
Yeah,
fine
that's
volume.
yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Excellent.
All right, David. Did you hear kind of the introduction, or do you need me to go through it again?
I did hear it. Thank you very much for letting me participate virtually. I'm in the COVID quarantine, so I'm not really supposed to leave the house. So thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, of course. And we hope that you're feeling better soon. If you want to just take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe include anything that you didn't mention in your letter of interest, and then we'll have the board ask you a couple questions.
I laid out the background that I would bring to a large extent in the letter.
Okay.
I first got to Brattleboro in 1982. I hitchhiked up here. And one of the things that I found was that the town was way less anonymous than where I grew up. And it seemed to offer a really good opportunity for engagement and participation in a way very different from what I encountered when I was a kid in Brooklyn. And I first was a town meeting representative, I think in 1986. I went to my first town meeting, and I left Vermont for a period of time. I came back, and I decided to join in and to begin participating, just like I had seen the opportunity here when I first arrived. And I found the work very, very rewarding. People often say, and they say it to you, that being on select board is a thankless job. But I never found it that way, really, because really we're giving back and working to strengthen the community and our system of government and our democracy as a whole. So I've had the chance to do that, and that's probably a theme that you'll hear throughout what I have to say in response to your questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Liz?
Hi, David.
Hey, Liz.
What do you hope to accomplish by participating in the Town Charter Committee?
I think at every step in town government, it's important to make sure that all voices get heard fully and that all information be gathered and processed, and that decisions get made based upon full and open consideration of all that information. And I think that I've got quite a bit of experience in trying to and making that happen. I started on Development Review Board. Judge Wright used to say that that's like family court for neighbors. And you asked about in the last interview about dealing with conflict. It's important to make sure that everybody's got an opportunity, a safe opportunity, to contribute what they've got and to say what they've got to say, and then for that information to be organized and fully considered before decisions are made. And it's not just at Development Review Board that I've had that opportunity. I was chair there, I think, 5 years. But I was on school board, I was on town school, high school board, and then select board for 6 years. And you all know some of the things still are with us now about the types of things we had conflicts with and where decisions needed to be made, where questions arose about the work that had been done. And we've now got new police fire facilities, but that was voted for and then voted against, and we have to go back to the drawing board. And I after coming off select board, I took some time away, and I was elected last year as moderator, and similarly just tried to make sure that debate is full, that everybody has a safe opportunity to say what they've got to say, that we consider all available information and make the best possible decision based on all of that. So I hope to be able to bring those skills to this process as well.
Thank you.
Any follow-ups, board?
I don't think so.
Daniel?
Okay, hi David. So, as you may have heard, it's likely you will have disagreements with your fellow commissioners about ideas and process. There, I did tidy it up. Tell us how you'll handle those moments if possible, give examples from your previous work.
I think I spoke about that a little bit. I didn't mean to foreshadow the answer to the question you just asked in my initial response. It's inevitable that there's going to be disagreements about policy, about procedure, about substance. I think that there are very different views about what the charter and what the town meeting should accomplish and what system should be in place for the government. And like I said, everybody needs to have the opportunity to contribute fully. And one of the biggest problems we have is people not listening respectfully to what's being presented by others with whom we disagree. And a functioning, a good functioning public government needs to make sure that people are heard and understood respectfully, and that decisions are then made with consideration of all the information that's been provided. And if I'm on the Charter Review Commission, I will try to insist that we fully consider everything that's provided, and then try to make decisions that are in the best interest of making sure that the government functions in the sunshine and operates for the public good. Because, I mean, those are really our ultimate objectives and our ultimate goals.
Great, thank you.
I mean, I deal with it in my day job. I'm a prosecutor, so I mean, it's really the best example of strenuously opposing views, and I think even in that context, everybody views the way I deal with others as respectful as possible. It's absolutely required, because it's the essence of how the government functions. Fairness to everybody.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Any follow-up questions on that one? Board? David, do you have any questions to the select board?
I might have asked the same question that Franz asked about whether there are any particular issues that you all anticipate arising. And I mean, I know that I've got a particular issue that seems to rise yearly, which is that there appears to be some question about the way in which amendments to the charter can be brought forward. And I will say, I think that that's an issue that probably deserves some attention going forward, because there appears to be confusion about that from time to time at the end of town meeting and in the lead up to town meeting. Other than that, if there are issues that you would anticipate arising, I think we'd all like to know that.
Issues that the board sort of identifies with their view of the charter, you mean, or?
Yeah, if there are, or that you've heard that other people are interested in addressing. But if there aren't, then we'll just work with it through the system.
Yeah, I'll look to my board members if they have any thoughts on that. I think we kind of, I'll speak just for myself here, David, that I think one of the things that is, we're kind of hoping to allow this committee or this commission to operate really without much initial guidance from the board, so that it can kind of move on its own and at its own pace, and can be really independent. And what we can do, and I think I really respect and appreciate a lot of your points about good governance. One of the things that I think we can do is provide sufficient staffing and support so that this commission can be successful. Because that's really what we want. I don't have like a card of things that I want to be accomplished, just that it be done in an open and fair way.
Yeah, I think, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
yeah, Tim. Quick.
I would agree that our role here, we pretty much have assumed that our role here is to pick good people who can work successfully together, and then really, we're the ones who get to wind up the group, but then they just go. And of course, anything the group comes back to town meeting with has to be
Defensible.
defensible and,
Legal and.
Yes.
So, but that's kind of exciting because I think we can focus on past experience and how well we think each applicant might be part of a group, a successful group, so.
Yeah. That at least partially answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much. I want to thank you again for letting me participate this way, and look forward to hearing how you decide to put the commission together. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David, and I hope you feel better.
Have a good night. See you.
Yep. All right. So we move on to Dennis. Denise. Oh, I'm sorry.
Not a problem.
I'm going to screw up all of these, maybe?
Can I get that list?
So can I do
We didn't
one?
really think the,
You know how you did your disclosure thing? Is that what you called it last time?
Yeah, do you want me to get you the site?
No.
Okay.
No, this is casual. I wanted to, this is a small town, I think I mentioned this last time. And I know pretty much almost all of these applicants, some of them pretty well. But Denise is a special case because I wanted to disclose to everyone that Denise is my ex-wife's sister.
Correct.
And so we know each other very well, or at least we knew each other very well during that time period, certainly. She's also the artist that gave me both my tattoos.
Oh.
Tribute.
Did you,
That's kind of
did you
personal.
do the tattoo or just design it?
No, I did them.
Oh. I also didn't know you had
Cool.
two.
Oh, well,
One of
we
them's
don't
in a
know each
very
other
private
well.
place.
We're letting.
That was some time ago.
So just to, if you,
quite a while ago.
so I guess like I'm gonna keep it a little formal. So you'll want to.
no bearing of tattoos.
No bearing. So you'll want to make sure that you raise this again when we're doing the vote, and you'll need to give board members an opportunity to request your. What is the term?
Recusal?
It may be recusal, it might be something else in the rules, but yes, from specifically voting on this candidate
When we vote,
when we vote.
which we'll
Sure,
do today.
but I can also defend my
Yes,
right to not recuse.
correct,
myself.
absolutely.
Perfect.
We don't do it very often, so it's just good to
Just
work through it.
exercising our statutory powers. That's not how to.
It's not a statute, but it's fun rules. All right,
Lawyer.
Denise, sorry about that, and sorry about getting your name incorrect. So would you like me to walk you through the process again, or you feel good?
I think I'm okay.
Okay, in that case, if you want to just tell us a little bit more about yourself that maybe wasn't in your letter, and then we'll.
I wish I remembered what was in my letter, but I've been coming up to this area for 20 years or so and fell in love with it when Tim and Eileen moved up here. And wanted to move up here for a long time. Where I used to live, there was no sense of community like I found here. I was warned that I was kind of walking into a fishbowl situation, but I've embraced that fully. I love it. And I just feel very strongly that I love this community and I want to be a part of it.
Excellent, thank you. Liz?
Okay, Denise, ready for the question?
Yes.
What do you hope to accomplish by participating on this town charter committee?
What do I hope to accomplish? I want to be a part of the process. I want to see how things work. I want to make sure that people of my ilk, I guess like a working class, former single, well, still a single mom, and, somebody with tattoos are represented. And I guess that's pretty much it. Just make sure everybody has a voice like has been stated before.
Thank you.
Any follow-up questions, board?
Nope. I cannot speak and write at the same time.
Yeah. Jess, were you?
Did you have a question?
Did
No.
I have a question?
No, okay.
It was kind of a follow-up question to the first part.
Yeah.
You're an RTM member, right?
Correct.
Have you served on any other boards in the community or boards within the town?
Yes, I started out with the Brattleboro Time Trade, and I'm on the tree committee.
Oh.
And love the trees, I'm also on the co-op, the food co-op board, which I've been for, I think, this is my second full term. So I'm familiar with, the ends and the means and the legal structure. What else? I'm on the board at Vermont Insight Meditation Center, so I have some skill with sitting quietly.
I think that's a good lead into the next question.
Yeah. I was wondering about, well, wherever there are people, there is conflict.
Yes.
And so even at Vermont Insight Meditation, I'm sure that's the case. So Denise, it's likely you will have disagreements with your fellow commissioners about ideas and process. Tell us how you'd handle that, and if possible, give examples from your previous work.
Okay. I'm good at listening, and I also have a tendency to be able to hold both sides of conflict and see, in most cases, both points of view. And I tend to be a person of few words, which I'm sure you can tell. Mm-hmm. But when I have something to say, I'm not afraid to say it. There hasn't been a lot of conflict in the boards that I'm on, so I don't think I have any examples.
Do you have any experiences on any of these boards of something that just has been sort of like the way they run or the way that people are participating that's not particularly effective?
I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I wasn't involved with one of the boards that I mentioned.
Yeah, you don't need to
Where-
say names.
Where there was a tendency for a lot of people's personal life to come into the room when we're trying to have a meeting, which would make the meeting very long. And currently for the tree committee, I'm the chairperson, so
Oh.
I get to, move the meeting along, and I've found that I'm comfortable doing that.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other follow-up questions, board? Do you have any questions for the select board?
They were already answered earlier so thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your application, and we'll let you know next week.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next up is Ernie. Come on down. Millicent, did you put your name on the list?
I didn't see the list.
I think she walked in after it came this way.
Sorry.
Oh,
I want to be on the list.
yes, I assume.
Hey, Melissa.
No. Okay, so,
I was automatically on the list by responding to the day that I would be here for the interview.
well, we're going to put you on the list now.
Okay.
I'm guessing I'm not on the list?
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
No, you're on the
Sign
list. You're on the list. Yep.
Oh, there's another list, Dan.
Is- yeah.
All right, we'll figure it out.
Okay, Ernie, I apologize.
No, not at all.
Just trying to keep the process fair. So tell us a little bit about yourself, then we'll get to ask some questions.
My name is Ernie Coughlin. I'm originally from Brattleboro, was born here, graduated from BUHS several years ago. Went to UVM, lived in several places, northern Vermont, Boston, Northern California, and I recently moved back to Brattleboro 3 years ago.
Welcome back.
And I would like to get involved. I joined the town meeting representative, and so that last year was the first year for that. For work, I was in the corporate world, negotiated sales contracts for big ticket items, air traffic control systems and jet engines around the world. Did business in about 25 different countries. Saw a lot of conflict. You talk about resolving issues. Well, I saw a lot of different cultures, a lot of different, and had to do business crossing cultures, crossing languages, and that's not easy. And as I said, moved back here and would like to be involved And I think Brattleboro's a great place. Otherwise, I wouldn't have moved back.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Ernie, what do you hope to accomplish by participating in this town meeting committee?
I also read the charter, which is a novel concept, probably. I think there's the town and the state, it's a unique place. I think it rightfully gets to be reviewed every period of time, and looking at the big picture and the small picture, and bearing in mind that the several aspects of the community. First of all, the people, then the environment, and then the perhaps business that allows it to thrive. There's a few. It might have been referred to as housekeeping chores, but there's a few things that might be a tad outdated. And looking at the process to make it updated and look forward for all the challenges that lie ahead.
Thank you.
Did you participate in RTM when you were living in Brattleboro before you?
No, I went directly from high school to
UVM.
UVM.
Okay. So your first time sort of experiencing that part of...
Yes, but I did stay, my parents lived here, maintained a house here, so I've been I wouldn't say part of the community, but maintained a strong understanding of what's going on here for the last number of years, forever.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Ernie, it's likely you will have disagreements with your fellow commissioners about ideas and process. Tell us how you would handle that, and if possible, give examples from your previous work.
Of course, there'll be disagreements, but hopefully everyone is going to the same place, the same end, which is trying to come up with the best charter at the end. And looking for commonality. I think that's one of the big things that one has to, when listening, I think listening is, of course, perhaps one of the most important aspects of the process, and then finding common themes or what people want, and build on those commonalities. And from those commonalities, usually you can find something to agree on. I know last week people talked about timing. There is no time here, so you can, as you work through the process, table an issue, put some issues out there, some solutions out there, some alternatives out there, and then come back to them after people have thought about them, because I know from experience looking at something once and then again and then even a third time, you might come up with a different view on it. And so, and my, what I did for a living for a long time, negotiating very large deals, if you will, in foreign countries required significant problem solving. And that was the name of the game. You knew that you had to achieve something at the end because, or one option was not agreeing, but that wasn't a good solution. And so as long as you're, everyone's there to come up with a, work towards the same end goal, then that would be a thing to do, is work together, listen, find commonality, and achieve the goal at the end.
Thank you.
Jess?
Just curious, is there a specific story or anecdote that you have of a way that you were able to get through an impasse?
Wow, it'd go on forever. How much time do you have? Well, I think that as far as there's many styles, there's many techniques. Perhaps best technique is laying out options. And if you've got 3 different people, you may have 4 different alternatives. but lay those alternatives out. And as you talk them through, people will usually, and then perhaps coming back to them later and seeing, does this still make sense? But there's lots and lots of techniques in negotiation skills that I have had experience with that I think could help the process.
Other follow-up questions? Ernie, you have any questions for us?
No, I think you've answered them, except that it sounded like an interesting process yourself, but it sounded like a bit.
It's one of the things where, it's not the charter review's job to figure out our rules better, the select board's rules better. It's our job, and we should really consider revising how we nominate people for committees, because it's pretty clunky. But, you'll see. It works okay with smaller numbers. Where it gets kind of messy is when it's a large crew, and that's where this is going to be a pretty large crew of nominations. So, yeah, but it's the rules I'm working
I
with.
think it works just fine.
Okay, well, clearly we have different opinions about it. All right, well, thank you so much for your application, and go Catamounts. I'm a fellow UVA. Yes.
You went to college?
I did go to college.
Didn't go to law school.
All right, next up, Andrew Davis.
All right. Hope it's okay, I brought some notes.
Yes.
All right, good evening, what's up?
Hi, Nate.
Hey.
What up? Want to tell us a little bit about yourself? We know you, but we'd also love to hear a little bit.
I knew you were going to ask that because you asked everybody else, so. Well, I'm pretty committed to Brattleboro. I grew up in suburbia, and as other folks have mentioned, Brattleboro was a unique find. I also lived in tiny towns in New Hampshire, and by the time I moved here in the mid-'80s, this felt like moving to the big city. Because Brattleboro is kind of a small town with a big city kind of outlook. I got very involved in the town. I taught over 30 years in our public schools here in Brattleboro and other places in Windham County. Got to know really the broad cross-section of people that live here in Brattleboro. It's more than an arts town. It's a post-industrial struggling town. It's got many different layers, and in the public schools, I got to know all of those elements. I've been on the town representative town meeting for many years and got to know the whole processes of decision-making there. I did get involved in the steering committee, which was a very interesting experience. I could go on about that. I got very interested recently over the COVID times in Robert's Rules of Order and the history of that and the functioning of that, and did some trainings on that online because Marshall Wheelock stopped doing those trainings, and it felt like there was a real need for that. So that became kind of a personal goal of mine. I was briefly on the Brattleboro Town School Board until Act 46 merged us into non-existence, and I was very outspoken in pushing back against the merger. But when the merger happened, I've been open-minded about some of the things that enabled to happen. So I think it's always important to, not take your marbles home, but to keep working, even when things don't. I've sometimes jokingly said I have a large trophy case at home of failed missions, but I keep going,
Yeah.
That's about, I do see this as an opportunity to serve the town, and I also, sometimes people say, well, why are you on representative town meeting? I say, well, it's an amazing learning experience, and I think this would be an amazing learning experience. So that's some about my background and why I'm interested in this.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Andy.
Hi.
What do you hope to accomplish by participating in the Town Charter Committee?
Yeah, as been mentioned, when I was on the steering committee, I read through the charter. There are some things that are inconsistent, even how we name members of RTM, for example. Are we members? Are we representatives? We were trying to write some documents to explain on the town webpage more about representative town meeting, and sometimes it was hard to find a consistent use of language in the town charter. So there's detailed things like that, technical things that have probably need updating. As been mentioned, the school board is outdated, the way it's referred to in the charter. Electronic meetings have become a really big thing, and there's some issues around, I don't know if that will reach the town charter level, but there's been such a sea change in how we gather, how we take turns speaking, how, I think that this whole issue of transparency and participation in the era that we now live in, there have been some big changes in society. And there's some ways to reflect that and update the charter in those areas. I do think one thing that hasn't been mentioned, and I was thinking it would be important for this commission to have some kind of venue for people in the town to make suggestions, people that are not on this commission, but there to be some sort of conduit where people that are feeling like, well, I wanted to be on that, but I'm not on that, so what do I do with my ideas that I wanted to bring to this commission? I think there should be a way for people to submit ideas for consideration by this commission. I think that's one thing I would speak up for. I do think I would go into it mostly with the idea of improving the functioning of town governance. Rather, I certainly do not come into this with a preconceived agenda for some way to rebuild governance in Brattleboro. But I see more how to improve what we have. But certainly if a suggestion was brought in that was intriguing and began to sort of gain momentum and seemed reasonable and possibly even supportable, I wouldn't be against pursuing some of that. But my attitude going in would be to update, improve, modernize. And the other thing, you can't be too dead set in your goals, because as you get older, you realize we're all expendable. I'm now retired. This is part of an ongoing process. This is going to happen in another 10 years and another 10 years. You don't go into this thinking like, I've got the ultimate solution for how Brattleboro should run itself. There should be some, I think, humility going into it, that this generation's taking time to evaluate it. And then other people will take it in a different direction to meet future challenges. So that's my mindset for going in. Okay, those are my goals.
Great.
Thank you.
Board, any follow-up questions on that one?
Not for me.
Danny?
Okay. Andy, it's likely you will have disagreements with your fellow commissioners about ideas and process. How will you handle those things? If possible, give examples from your previous work.
Yes. I like to think of myself as somebody who enjoys hearing viewpoints that are different than my own. It's actually more stimulating for me to hear somebody disagreeing with me than just saying the same thing that I've been saying. I've often thought at town meeting, one of the things that we should go into as town meeting reps is, instead of sitting in our chair thinking of what we're going to say when it's our turn, to be finding what we believe in what other people say. And I think that it's better to hear other people's points of views that are different than our own and try to find the common ground in that and understand why people have a different view. Sometimes people have a different view, but underneath, the goals are identical. And it's just different ways or different values being expressed. You want a specific example. The The experience of the steering committee was very interesting because it did not go through a process like you're going through to sort of choose a team, like Abraham Lincoln with his cabinet of rivals. And he had a theory about how to be best advised. The steering committee was who raised their hand at a certain moment, and bingo. So talk about different agendas, different opinions, different styles. It was a little bit like the Wild West. And I know that one thing that worked for me on some of the committees and subcommittees I was on was the use of Robert's Rules. Robert's Rules is designed to give everybody a chance to speak, but when everyone has had an opportunity and you can make a motion and have a vote, you're going to go in the direction that the majority of people are feeling is the right way to go. And it's that balance between the rights of the majority and the rights of the minority to be heard. And I think if that's done with respect for one another, following the rules is a very good way to go. And not getting personal about it, but just, that's a really interesting point of view, but you're the only one that has it in this room. And you make that apparent by proposing, putting forth a motion, having it seconded, discussing it, having a vote, and moving on, rather than getting caught up in the disagreements or getting personal about it. That's been said before. The commissioners would all need to be respectful of one another and hopefully bring different points of view. It would be a pretty boring commission if we all sat down and said, gee, we know exactly what we all agree. That would not be a very dynamic situation. So I sort of look forward to hearing different points of view.
Board members, follow-up questions? You actually answered I was gonna kind of follow up about the steering committee. We had another candidate who was on it, and I asked, sort of, you kind of got to it, but, so I won't belabor the point. Any questions for the select board?
Well, I guess that I mentioned Abraham Lincoln's cabinet of rivals. Is that part of your process to try to get a broad representation based upon people's speaking, or to try to more go for a congeniality of people who you think are going to all get along together, or?
I bet you have 5 opinions about that.
We're
Probably
our
different
own
ones.
cabinet.
You're your own cabinet of rivals, okay.
I will answer, I'm gonna use the opportunity of answering that question to sort of say something that I wanted just to say to the room that I didn't at the beginning of the meeting, which is that, especially Liz's question about like what you hope to accomplish, this is not saying that your answer is not a good answer. I just want to make it clear that coming to this committee application with an agenda is not a problem.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, there's nothing that says that you can't apply and really want to do something specific. This would be a very appropriate place to apply and try to do that. And so, we've heard a couple of answers that have kind of a very different perspective, which is also entirely legitimate and reasonable. But to answer your question, one of my hopes is by asking Liz's question, we can know a little bit more about where people are coming from so that we can build a good team. And that will include people who may have a very specific thing that they're interested in looking at.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Any other board member want to speak on it?
I don't feel the need.
Okay. Great.
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for your application.
Great.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you. All right.
Oh, yeah.
George.
Gesundheit.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
I was thinking as I listened to the questions, let me see, maybe I can get through this without too many of the questions.
This is how we got to this at some point in the meeting, in the last one.
I came to the area in the late 60s to attend Windham College, and after that worked for the Reformer for 12 years. And during that time, I lived in Guilford, so I could not participate in town meeting in Brattleboro, but I covered it for many years, covered the selectmen. And I really enjoyed seeing how the Brattleboro representative town meeting in many ways mirrored, very refined, but mirrored what I was seeing in the town meetings of Guilford, which are still is the traditional town meeting. Left Brattleboro for work, but my wife and I both thought we wanted to come back here, so when we retired, we did. I moved back in 2015, and right away, we both got on the RTM. Actually, I was a year ahead, I guess. But we became RTM members, and I've enjoyed that. And I also served on the steering committee for a while. The question, I think, is what do I intend to accomplish? I don't intend to accomplish anything on the Charter Commission. Don't have any agenda or something like that. What I would like to see happen is the Charter Commission work to hear all kinds of ideas, digest them, sift them down, and try to keep the thing moving, not particularly fast. I don't think the Commission is a race. In some degree, the steering committee was. We were trying to get stuff done, before the next town meeting. So, as I say, I don't want to accomplish anything other than to accomplish a process that is fair and open and moves us in a good direction. And as far as conflict goes,
I'm just going to 1 second to see if
Okay.
any board member wants to have a follow-up on that. No, I think I'm good.
as far as conflict goes, one aside, I think a lot of that may depend on the skill of the chairman or chairperson of the commission. But what needs to happen is to make sure that everyone's heard and they understand and keep it open. You may find this a little bit disconcerting, but I'm not sure the commission needs to come up with one answer. It'd be nice to be able to work on by consensus when we can, but it may well be that the commission would want to propose two alternatives on a particular part to town meeting. I don't know, I don't have an example. I'm not saying, well, we ought to do this or do that, but there may be one way to suggest a town move and hear the reasons for it, and other members of the commission may say, well, rather there's this. And ultimately, that decision would be up to the town meeting members or the town. And I'm not sure that I'm not in my heart, I'm not sure the commission has to decide necessarily on every single point. That there may be things that they should hand to the town to decide.
Follow up.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm assuming follow-ups on that one. Do you have more on?
No.
That? Oh.
When you say hand to the town, please describe what you mean.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
You said hand to the town.
Oh.
Who are we handing it to?
To the town, well, it depends on town meeting members, I assume.
Is that your preference?
As opposed to what? I mean, the voters,
The
ultimately.
voters is,
Whichever, here's something I probably should be clear on, I'm not. I'm not sure whether the charter change proposals get approved by town meeting or the voters at large. Although even if it's town meeting, I know that it can be challenged, so ultimately it's the town voters. So when I say two things, I can't come up with a good example right now because I don't have any preconceived ideas about where we ought to go. But let's be silly. Let's say the town charter should say that the municipal center should be painted blue. And other people say, no, the municipal center should be painted red. And there's reasons for each. I don't think the commission would have to necessarily reach consensus on which color it should be. I'm saying that might be a question you'd hand to town meeting to come up with the answer.
Good thing the building's brick.
You can paint brick.
But as they found out at Wyndham College, the paint doesn't stay on the bricks.
Yeah. Well, from back then, I don't know. Paint might be a little better now, but okay. Yeah, that was kind of my question too. I think yeah, I'd be curious to see how like Attorney Fisher would sort of look at that question of could the commission sort of propose like multiple options on something? I have no idea. So that's it's really interesting.
I actually look forward to hearing a lot from him in the beginning of the thing, including starting on how we make sure we follow the open meeting law. But
Pretty straightforward on that one.
Pretty straight.
Warn them.
several folks have tripped over it, so we want to not do it again.
Yeah. That's
I'm not. There might be other ways to accomplish it. For instance, maybe the Charter Commission would want to have some hearings, want to have some town meetings with straw votes on various pieces before it comes up with the final.
yeah.
I think there should be ways to explore all ideas, and when there are two ideas in opposition that are both good ideas or strong ideas with good reasons for them, I'm not sure the commission needs to come up with a final answer on that. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Other questions on that? Any questions for the select board?
The ones I had have already been answered.
Excellent. It's one of the nice things about having everybody in the
Right.
room. Well, in that case, George, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll let you know in a week.
A week?
Yep. 1 week.
Hooray.
You don't want to wait?
Oscar.
Of course I do.
They could hear the questions. There's no requirement that we don't have questions.
Howdy.
I'll say it.
No, that they can hear.
Yeah.
We'll save it.
You can hear us state the questions each time. If like.
Oh, no, that's okay.
People hear it a bunch and they kind of want to kind of just go through it, which is totally fine. But also we can absolutely read it out.
No, whatever you guys like. I remember them.
Whatever your preference is.
Whatever your preference. And welcome, Oscar. Want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I think the basics were probably in the letter, and I won't go on too much, but I live in Brattleboro on Elliott Street. I'm a town meeting rep. I'm on the Finance Committee this year, a former chair. I was on the Energy Committee for a number of years as the chair also, and I'm a local small business runner person, and I think that's about it. I generally try to stay involved and informed on town politics stuff, so that's how I got involved in applying for this.
Excellent.
Now,
Liz, or the first you
Oscar.
this is
Hi,
goals, right?
goals.
What do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, I, like a lot of other people, I'm not going into it with something in mind, more that I think it's an opportunity, it's an important task, it's an opportunity for public service, and it's the sort of thing I think I'd be good at. It's the kind of work I enjoy. So, I think if selected, I could do some valuable work for the town, but there's nothing in the charter that I have in mind. I don't have any sweeping reorganizations or anything like that planned but I think, in terms of what kind of role I might play on the commission, I think I'm generally pretty progressive when it comes to, like relative to what I see in town meeting and stuff like that. I'm probably in the left third, but I don't necessarily feel, I think the charter makes a lot of sense as actually as kind of a consensus document that moves slowly and changes slowly. So there are a lot of things I might like the town to do in an ideal world. I'm not sure the charter commission is necessarily where I would push for those things, but I have an open mind on suggestions that were made or things we heard from the public or anything like that. But yeah, I think that's about where I think I'd fall.
Ford, any questions on goals? Daniel.
If you were making this charter review commission, would you try to make the commission representative of a broad cross-section? Because you sort of just labeled yourself as like occupying a particular political space, right? Would you want this commission to have a broad spectrum?
Yeah, I think it should be representative, definitely. That goes along with the sort of consensus document type of idea, which I'm sure other people may not agree with, but another small note along those lines is I think it would be great to have some younger people on the commission. I'm sure there are other applicants in my general age range, so I'm not pushing it as a qualification or anything, but I think, town government, every committee I've been on, it skews 50 plus pretty comfortably. The select board's actually unusually young, I think, which, what are you going to do? But, yeah, exactly. But, so, if you're talking team of rivals, I don't know if that's necessarily the best. I mean, that was a pretty vicious team of rivals historically that were sort of pitted against each other so that they would compete and do their best for the president. I think that might be a little savage for a charter review commission.
Didn't work out for Lincoln very well.
Well, yeah, not in the end.
I think no, from now on, though, I'm just going to be considering this as the...
Okay, that's good. But, so something I have been thinking a lot about is that, maybe I should save this for I'll save that for the next question.
Okay.
No spoilers.
Let's move on to the next question.
Yeah. Next question. Do you know the next question?
Yeah, disagreements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can provide an example.
Oh, specific examples?
That's
Okay.
part of the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just enjoying watching Daniel's face every time he read the same sentence and looked more and more unhappy every time.
I think it's fine.
It's all his fault, though.
We should seal the edits.
Yeah, I don't know. I think any participation in town government is basically every committee, no matter how minor, there's going to be plenty of that. I don't know. I've been chair on 2 committees. I think I have a pretty good temperament for it. I don't really, unless someone's being intentionally offensive, I don't think I have much ego around being disagreed with or anything like that. I think, I had never thought before of the idea of, I've been assuming, and I guess I don't know what the answer is, but that the commission had to come up with a single unified document at the end, which, if true, means there's not as much, you can't concede as much to consensus. At a certain point, you have to decide if something's in or out, and that's it. I'm actually kind of getting to skip a finance committee meeting next door.
Nice.
By being here, by accident. But we have a policy there that sort of a norm, I guess, to be pretty, if there's something that seems conflicted, we'll often just take no position in our report, and a policy that if we put something in by vote, people can sort of have a right to put their dissent in the report too, and say, like, this got voted in, but I feel differently. That's not something you can really do with a charter, of course, but that's a specific example of how we tried to deal with that kind of like committee-based disagreement. But the thing I was going to say before, and will say now, is that what you brought up earlier, you guys have the benefit of choosing the commission, and I think it should be a diverse commission in terms of politics and age and gender and race. As much as you can do, you want to represent the whole town. I think you should look for people who have demonstrated skills of working together and being good at compromising. Because if you have a commission, if you have a group of people where that doesn't happen, it doesn't matter if you use Robert's rules or whatever techniques, you're just going to run into brick walls. So, yeah.
Questions on second question? Any questions for us?
No, I don't think so. No, I cede my time.
Excellent. All right, Oscar, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
2-minute comfort break?
What's that?
A 2-minute comfort break?
Yeah, absolutely. We're just going to take a 2-minute comfort break, and we'll be right back. All right. Next up is one Gary Stroud.
Woo, Gary Stroud, come on down.
the man, the legend. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you guys for having me. Good to see you. It's been a while. Give me with your best shot.
Okay, so Gary, we've all read your letter of interest, but do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself that maybe the board doesn't know?
Yes, for those who don't know me, let me introduce myself, past, present, and future. Gary Stroud. I've been in Brattleboro since after 9/11 I moved up here. Been here for now 15 years. My daughter's graduating next year off to college, UMass. Proud of that. I've been involved with a lot of committees, organizations in Brattleboro. I'm also a town representative. I've been on that for like 3 years. I'm the chair, as a matter of fact. I believe it's WA District 2 now, if I'm not mistaken. So being involved in that, matter of fact, next year is my last year, maybe. Haven't decided yet. So still a work in progress with that. I enjoy everything that I do, working with people, with the town, with the committees, on a lot of different levels, in a lot of different places, meeting people one-on-one, be it at the grocery store or here in the public or in the committees. I have a lot of vast knowledge being on the DRB, the Planning Commission, Brattleboro Housing Partnership. Also, I'm on the Senior Meals on Wheels on that board. I do volunteer work sometimes at Loaves and Fishes to help out during Christmas, to help, food drives and all that, and at Putney Food Show. I'm on the Tree Advisory Committee as well, so I like to get involved, get myself out there, be very active in the community, very committed, very dedicated, getting things done. So, yeah.
Great. Liz?
Hey, Gary.
Hey, Liz.
What do you hope to accomplish by participating on the steering?
Bringing a lot of my enthusiasm, my energy, my commitment, my drive, my dedication, my passion, compassion, and my experiences of dealing with a lot of committees, also being on CPCC, dealing with people, being a moderator, peacemaker, a liberator, helping out in areas, being that person that's going to say, we all could have some type of consensus. There's always going to be disagreements no matter where you are, but having that place where we all can be, having that foundation, having the rules set in place and that structure to move forward, to be functional and not dysfunctional. Learning from past experiences even now. I studied the Charter Review Committee, and also I went back in the archives like the National Treasure and dug up, the basic charters and, that are on the town, and being on the DRB, knowing a lot about the zoning, being on Planning Commission and learning about housing, trying to help implement maybe some change, bringing it up to speed and saying, this is something we need to do and implement, and then passing that torch along to the next generation that comes along to help them improve it, because there's always room for improvement anywhere we go. And, seeing from what I read, a lot of stuff, was it been 15 years, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, from the last committee, and speaking from people who have been on it recently and what their experiences was on it as well, too. I would say, yeah, basically getting involved in this is a big challenge for a lot of us, and bringing this up to speed to say to myself, this is something for not just for the town, for the new, but for the people that have been here and the people that are going to be coming later on down the road.
Great. Board, questions on first? No? Great. Daniel?
Gary, it's likely you'll have disagreements with your fellow commissioners about ideas and process. Tell us how you would handle that. If possible, please give examples.
Can't we all just get along? That's probably one of my big. I would say basically sitting down. And I've had experiences in that area, on certain committees. I believe listening to each other, having respect for each other, taking ideas, writing down the pros and cons, using sense and sensibility, being a realist and saying, what's the best course of action, what's best for this charter that's going to help it move along to where it needs to be so we can move along in the town as well. being that example on how it should be done. And like I said, having that foundation and the rules set in place, making it happen. It's not going to be every day we're going to agree on things, but at least we could all take each other's opinions and thoughts, put it together, and see what is the best solution for this particular charter or particular issue that comes along. Trying not to stay on it too long, but coming to some type of mutual agreement.
Board, follow-up questions
Thanks,
on?
Gary.
What's it?
I just said thanks.
Gary, do you have any questions for the select board?
Oh, yeah, I heard listening about alternatives. I was just wondering if an alternative is in play, if you have an alternate. Because as we know, a lot of committees, sometimes they slim you down, people come and go. Is that an option, perhaps, you said, mentioning at one time, maybe considering having alternates, if that's the case?
The board hasn't considered it yet.
Okay.
That's, I think, the easy answer.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't sort of do the process where we're going to appoint commissioners and then consider, appointing alternates if the board felt that was an appropriate thing to do. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to, but I haven't discussed it with Attorney Fisher.
To see how that would work. Right, that makes sense. That makes sense, totally. I guess my final question, like my last interview, working at Goodwill now. When do I start?
What's that?
Looking for the start date.
Is that the question?
Yeah, just looking at when the start dates are happening. Is it the 20th, I guess?
So we're going to be appointing the commission on the 20th, and then the commission commences, I believe, probably January 1st.
Okay.
So you would begin whenever I'd imagine town staff will help initiate sort of the first meeting for people's schedules, and then from then you can sort of figure out when you're meeting, how often. That's one of the things that's very cool about this is that you kind of have the control to determine all of that on your own.
Right, you have that navigation, which is good to have that. That's perfect. That's great. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. Maybe you would be able to meet between the 20th and the 1st, but that's like 2 pretty busy holiday weeks, so I don't imagine you would, but I'm not going to say that you couldn't. Maybe you could if we appointed you then. So hopefully that answers your question.
It totally did, absolutely.
Excellent.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you all. Getting to it. If I also have a happy holidays and a new year.
Yeah.
Prosperous. Stay healthy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Next up, Tom. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here and have the opportunity to potentially be on the commission.
Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I know the steps. I moved to Brattleboro about 5 years ago. I chose this town as being a place that I thought would be great for me and compatible. I found it to be very, an enticing but peaceful place to live, and where people maybe care about maybe different things than, let's say, the rat race is maybe my ill-chosen phrase for it, but coming from the suburbs of Massachusetts, I liked kind of the values and the pace of life here quite a bit more. After being here about a year, I felt like I made the right choice, and I got a fixer-upper house, and so that's been consuming a lot of my time, doing a lot of home improvement projects myself, and renting out rooms. So maybe I'll bring that in not as a directly relevant example to dealing with conflict, but enough. It's other people in close quarters dealing with sensitive issues. But I'll hold off on that for now. About the same time, I decided to get involved in town government through a volunteering capacity, and got on the planning commission, and then some other positions followed through that. And I think I spelled that all out in the in my letter there. But yeah, I wanted to, I wanted to put roots down, and I wanted to contribute to this town in the sense of maintaining what I liked about it, but also everything can be improved. So, and I spoke a little bit in the, wrote a little bit in the letter about knowing a bit about state government too, and the workings there. And I think that's relevant here because we have to ultimately get approval from the legislature and the governor. Maybe this is similarly where the legislature can override the governor with 2/3 veto. I'm not sure if it works that way for this as well. But it's a statute like any other, so perhaps. So, I think it's important to be cognizant of that part of the process too, not to necessarily dilute Brattleboro's, representing Brattleboro's values and goals in the charter to hopefully, but maybe to some degree, keeping it realistic. But of course, I don't have my pulse on the majority view of municipal charters and stuff, but it's something to keep in mind. I've been interested, and I've spoken with some town reps and put forth a bill in the past and been on this working group for another bill at the state level. So
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
and what I hope to accomplish, Liz?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
I do share some of the generalities that others gave about having an open mind and wanting to hear all sorts of opinions. I also feel like I do have some specifics that I would like to see, but at the same time I realize that I think all of us have been in the position where we feel something very strongly. Now I'm kind of overlapping with the next question, but I'll try to rein it back in, where you feel like something is so certain and so compelling of an idea, but most other people don't agree with you on that. So I've had some situations. I feel like I'm a quick learner, and I've made some proposals in the past. Some have been taken well, some haven't, and I'm realizing that I have realized that that's just the way it goes for everyone who puts himself out there with a proposal or whatnot. Some of the more general things I'd like to accomplish is increasing local control to the extent that we can. I know there was that pilot charter amendment proposal a few years ago. I admit I don't know what happened to that, if it just didn't see any movement or not. But that's a specific thing. I just mean in general, like I think you all remember with the alternative energy tax stabilization contract things that's not something that would be relevant to the charter, but that's something that I found in statute that gave more power to the select board to implement something. So I'd like to see things like that where, now since the charter would be new statute, we wouldn't have to see what's already existing in the charter, in state statute to see what we can activate for ourselves. We could actually potentially just create new things. So that's very compelling to the extent that it would get accepted by the state legislature and governor. I'd like to see an easy way to come up with new ideas is to look at other state charters, at other municipal charters in Vermont. There's a few dozen of them. So that's, an easy way to find new ideas that may be good for Brattleboro. And then also looking at some charters in other states, some less relevance there, but I think within a state there can be kind of an echo chamber. And so, for example, RTM in Massachusetts only needs 10 signatures on a petition to get an article on the warning. Not percent, 10. So that seems, reckless and minor to us here.
Wow.
But throughout that state, that's how they do it there. Now, there may be a limit, like no frivolous, illegal,
And who determines
irrelevant things. But there are a few towns in Vermont that are much less than the 5% requirement as well. North Bennington Village only requires 10 signatures. So it's happening. That's a smaller town. They're about 1,700 people. I looked that up. But still, that's way less than 5% or 10% of the voters. So that's one thing that, that I feel kind of strongly about, but I recognize that other people on the commission may not. But it's something I'd like to try again to build a case for. And then there's just throughout the process, of the Charter Revision Commission, trying to make the process, of course there's open meeting law and all the meetings will be open to the public, but reaching out to people. And one thing that might be kind of messy, but I think could garner a lot of good ideas from the public and their sentiment is doing some outreach right on Facebook, right on the Brattleboro page. I realize a lot of the people on there aren't residents or aren't anymore, but I think a fair amount of them are. And, you know, we can't just post the whole charter and say, what do you think? Maybe we could, but then we could do another round of like little snippets, little bite-sized snippets, see what people think and what their feedback may be. I think one really specific one we could all get behind is eliminating the weigher of coal.
Oh.
Unless that's fodder for comedy at select board meetings, I don't know.
It has been in the past. Yes. Yeah. And actually,
That's sort of my retirement plan.
Yeah. So I don't want to take away. I don't want to take away from morale during meetings by removing some of this funness. But we can talk about that in the fence viewer and the shingles and lumber person as well. The school director position. Another thing, this I think COVID brought this to people's attention, or made some municipalities and states throughout the country start doing this, is electronic voting and signatures. We could look into that and see if that's, gives better accessibility to people. I don't see why it wouldn't, but see the feasibility of that. And let's see. And cleaning up the charter, making it, I mentioned the Facebook thing about how maybe putting the whole charter out there is, bite size might be better, but maybe not. But in line with that, just making it as user friendly, and it's an instruction manual, and for town governance, but also the powers of each individual person. And there's sections for powers and duties and responsibilities of the select board, of the school directors, which we get rid of the people, but there's no section for RTM. It just says they have all that's left over. Well, what are those things? We know what some of them are, approving the budget, but maybe there's other things, and it would be and we're not going to write an exhaustive list, but it'd be helpful to see some, have all these branches of governance equally defined, like the town manager, position is as well, role is as well. Those are some thoughts on what I'd like to accomplish.
great. Board, questions on the goals, accomplishments? No? Daniel?
Would you like me to read the question?
No.
All right.
I got it. I think setting up the commission to succeed is the first step, and you guys can't do that, right, except for who you're choosing. Besides the steering committee, all the other boards and commissions I've been on, have already, they weren't new when I joined them. They already had a process, they already had rules, they had a staff person who could often bridge, and get new members up to speed, and kind of not be a rudder, but be a foundation, be support, do a lot of our homework for us, depending on, a volunteer's level of commitment. So it sounds like we will have that for the commission, which is great. And I think, I would be in support of, I plan to be. I think for the steering committee, I was in support of Robert's rules, but, starting off. But some others had some strong opinions about others, and we didn't develop that too much, unfortunately. But I think this time around, I'm going to be more resolute on just going with what seems to work with other commissions, unless people bring forward a real developed and compelling process. And also similarly, I'm really going to double down on, if I end up being on the commission, on advocating for and voting for the best chairperson that there can be, someone who has experience and has proven themselves to be a good facilitator, mediator, shepherd through the process of going from, getting to the goals. It's not the time to develop a new person's credentials. And I don't think I'm that person either. I saw some, I've seen some people at this meeting and at the others who have interviewed who I think would be really great for that role. And I think to tie it back to what I was saying about renting rooms in my house to a few other people, I found, there can certainly be, obviously we're dealing with different topics than the Charter Revision Commission versus renting, living with the people. But when issues come up, I find that, a couple things that work for me is to put effort in to explain the issue instead of just a quick reactive thing, and to be vulnerable, to say, like, what's my reaction to this, and why I'm upset about it, and give a little humanity to it instead of just the label of, no, that's wrong. And I think that, I think I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Board, questions on? Second? Tony, you have any questions for Select Board?
I do. It's kind of a fun one, maybe. Feel free not to answer. If all of you were not Select Board members, would you want to be on the Charter Revision Commission?
Absolutely.
Oh, I wanted to be on it even though I am on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
select board.
Liz?
Okay.
110%. Yes.
Good to know.
I feel really bad that we can't be on it, and so the only thing I'm going to try and do.
There's a way you
is-
could be.
Yeah, there is. I saw that in the charter.
Is there? Okay, well, I'm not going to do that. I really want to make sure that we select the best commission that we can.
Yeah, I think that's we just were in this room for like 6 hours yesterday doing a Select Board meeting, and we wanted to make sure that we really did a good job doing the interviews and really considering this commission. And I think it's partially because we all really know how important the charter is and how important this commission is going to be. So, we want to do a good job and really assemble a good team to do this work.
And so
Great.
that's our contribution to the process.
Yeah, which feels
I know.
good. That does feel
Oh, yeah,
good.
for sure. Okay.
Or
Thank you.
I'll take Ware of Cole.
What's that?
Or Ware of Cole is my.
You can't take that away.
Oh,
It's part of our culture.
All right.
you can comment at the
on-
meetings.
Thank you.
All right. Howard.
Come on down.
Could it be aware of emissions?
Was because somebody might get a delivery of coal that they believe is no weight.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Hello.
I know some of you.
I guess I didn't have the board introduce ourselves.
Oh, we
That's
didn't
all right.
introduce.
I forgot.
Oops.
Sorry. I think we basically knew everybody, but
Yeah.
it's good to see
Howard,
you.
you know me.
I do. Are you still mad at me for? Never mind. She may need to recuse herself from this.
Irish Italian heritage.
Yeah. So, good luck.
Yeah, my background was science, really. My dad had been real sick, and my mom had had a car accident, and I got real interested in, trying to do some of that. So I went to UVM, got a PhD studying synapses, of course, why not? And then got really interested in just how difficult it is to work at NIH, where you've got pharmaceuticals and clinicians and research people, and the clinicians want to, answer questions right away. And research people want to question answers all the time, and it's a difficult match. So I got involved in some of the leadership there and actually moved to NASA, where I got much more involved in the leadership, where we were building Earth observing systems. I've been doing remote sensing of brains, so you might as well do remote sensing of Earth. And there, I fell in love with libraries. I mean, seriously, digital libraries are just going to change the world. It's the way to go. And I worked on a project with the Watkins IBM Watson Lab, doing epidemiology using satellite imagery, and got into, we did a National Science Digital Library, which is aimed more at school kids, and I was elected to the policy chair because trying to get agencies to work together across science, it's not going to happen. NASA and NIH and NSF and NOAA, and they're all competing for funds, they're all competing for things, so I kind of have some experience there. Governance structures, I was the governance chair for the Earth Systems Partner Association, which was a group of academics trying to talk to businesses, trying to talk to government. And the governance there is really important because you don't just want up and down votes. You really want proportional representation. You want to know how much people care about each vote. And you really want to try to have a couple of options on the table. So a simple way to do that individually is to give people 100 votes and say, here, vote for these. You've got 100 votes, distribute them how you want. And you'll find out immediately how much they care about certain things. I work, one of my proudest moments, right, is with Sherry Manning trying to get Becca to run for Congress. And so we got her in finally, and I guess she's...
It wasn't really that hard now, was it?
I think it was back then, actually, because nobody knew her. She was, and then doing it for the state, she did that on her own. But when she first ran, it was a tight race. That's okay. I helped with the Democratic platform with Sue Borden for the state. For the trustees in the library, I'm the liaison, so I do the statewide stuff, and I'm the only trustee to ever have been selected for the New England Leadership Library Symposium. There are 4 from the state. So I went for a week and hung out with librarians from all over New England.
Cool.
And I do, as you know, Braver Angels and Brattleboro Compassion, which is really, if you've seen some of the articles that we've done, I've done 2, about how do you deal with disagreement? How do you get, when the facts don't even agree, what do you do? So,
yeah.
I don't know.
So do you want to hear Liz's question again, or?
Sure.
Hey, Howard,
What do I want?
what do you hope to accomplish by participating in the town charter?
Yeah, it's an important question. I think it's a really important time for charters, and I think Brattleboro has to lead the state here. Technology and global warming, there's so many things that have just really changed libraries, and they change government. Tom brought up some issues of voting rules and how to use computers to help really assess how people feel about things. And I think that's really important. And one of the things that we did on the steering committee with Millicent was a survey of the RTM members. And we got like 80% of the people to write back a long survey, which I can't believe that. I've never seen that. And they wrote detailed stuff, so we know a lot about the districts. And I'd like to apply that to really get the people who aren't in RTM. I've worked a lot as part of the library with Condos and Winter, and I've talked already quite a bit with Sarah Copeland Hansa. And I think the charter needs people who kind of know these people, because the charter is going to be handled through them and then the state. So I don't know. I think that you could just draw a lottery. The 21 people that showed up are awesome people. And you guys get a star. I mean, how do you do what you do? I don't get it. Anyway, what else am I supposed to do? Disagreement? I couldn't handle some.
Just before we go to that, board, any questions on first?
Oh, I actually have a little question.
A little question?
Yeah, so, you spoke about the RTM Steering Committee's survey.
Yeah.
I filled out that survey. That's irrelevant. But,
cool.
So that's a survey of a subsection of the town, right?
Well, they're reps.
A pretty committed
They're
group of
reps.
people.
They're representatives, so they know their district. And the 3 districts are pretty
Potentially.
interesting.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, I know. I know.
That's how the system is supposed to work.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on how to engage the wider community around the commission's work?
I very much so. I really like the Planning Commission. I like that we have a planning service here. And by using them a lot more, they prepare a town plan, which they haven't done for a while now. But there are 12 sectors, and I've written articles for the Vermont Library Association newsletter about how to get libraries to open up. There are 12 different things that the municipalities are meant to cover. And all 12 of those need to be sampled one at a time, try to figure out if we're hitting across the age group, hitting across the economic distributions. There are a lot of things that are fun to look at.
Thanks. Oh, my second question. The second question.
The second.
Howard, it's likely you will have disagreements with your fellow commissioners about ideas and process.
Incredibly likely.
Tell us how you would handle that. If possible, give examples from your previous work.
I would appeal to Kate. We're going to have O'Connor. Peter Ella and I are always going to disagree until he explains it to me. I think, having 7 people, you're going to find a way to get along. I've been married for 40 years. Married here in Brattleboro, 44 years. I'm sorry, it keeps changing. But yeah, the article that I wrote for Braver Angels talks a lot. It came from American Library Association conference talk about how do we deal with disagreement. And it's not just facts, it's feelings and respect. I mean, if they know you respect them, they're going to treat you differently. And you're going to come up with some common grounds. Some you'll agree, some you won't agree, and then you go to compromise and you try to weigh how much each cares and do something fair. I know a lot about that because I've done the last 10 years here in philosophy and philosophy of law and looking at some of the Supreme Court rulings and how they work on original. I was the foreman of the grand jury in New Hampshire for a year, which wasn't fair because they brought a whole room full of people and I thought I got through without having to serve at all. And then they said, except for you guys who are going to be the foreman. It wasn't fair. But anyway.
Great, thank you.
Questions on second answer? Howard, do you have any questions for the select board?
How do you do it? My God, you're amazing. Seriously, it's so much time and so much effort. But I don't really have questions. I think I know most of you pretty well. People have asked questions before. And literally, if you threw the ballots down the stairs, you would come up with 7 great people. And I'm hoping that we can keep all 21 so that we can sort of delegate some things. So we'll see how that works.
Great.
Thanks.
I feel that way every time there's more applicants than positions. So
Yeah.
I always want to encourage anyone who doesn't get in to redirect their energies to another committee
Or stay engaged with the process.
Stay engaged, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, just show up at those meetings. It's great to have public participation.
Yeah, I'm sure one of us will show up from time to time.
You're allowed to do that?
Could.
Yes.
We're members of the public.
Are we?
Open meetings.
It's a joke.
Tim has nothing to do, so.
Yeah. All right.
And I'm sorry, I had my boosters yesterday, so I'm like feeling very sick tonight.
Okay.
And I was exposed to COVID at this meeting. I got COVID at the Community Leaders Conference. They had 500 people for the VRDA in August. And then yesterday at the board meeting, they reported that somebody came up this morning with COVID. So.
What's the VRDA?
Vermont Rural Development Association, I think.
Thank you.
And that and the League of, Cities and Towns. I've been to those meetings as part of the library stuff. So.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Taking the time.
All right. So I don't know which of the last 2 candidates in the room was here first.
Millicent had already signed it when I, so
Very well.
Millicent. Thank you.
Hello?
Welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Do you, you know the drill?
I think so.
Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And
Yep, I don't remember much of what was in my letter. I've lived in Brattleboro since December 2018, so I'm fairly new. I've been involved in various things in the community and town service pretty much since I started. My husband was here for 17 years or so before, and I've been on a couple of years on the Finance Committee, a couple of years on the Energy Committee. Currently, I've been working with the EDCD Multicultural Center to kind of form a team that's complementary to the co-sponsor teams that are already existing. The co-sponsor teams are dedicated to specific refugee families. This is like a welcome team where I'm the neighbor of SIT, and I've gotten together a bunch of other neighbors, and we're helping people when they first arrive, before they have a co-sponsor team.
Yeah.
Like, hello, what's here in the community, get people oriented. So, today I spent a half a day in dental emergency with a 5-year-old Afghan child. And I'm a member of the Hatch Space, learning power tools and table saws and making things, and I'm a steward, a volunteer steward there. So that's my current.
Great. So, Millicent, what do you hope to accomplish by participating in the Town Charter Committee?
Well, I generally want to feel that we've gotten a lot done and would like other people in the community to feel that we have gotten a lot of good work done. I don't have too many specific things that I'd like to see accomplished. I know that there's housekeeping, and I've heard of some things that are housekeeping, and there are going to be some bigger policy issues that would get discussed. I have one that I'm interested in working on. I could be convinced otherwise, but when I first signed up to be part of RTM, I was thrilled, because I'd never been part of a state where that was possible. And my friends who don't live in this congratulated me, and I sort of found out pretty soon that it's very easy to be in RTM because the numbers, they're like not as many people sign up as there are spots, and I would really like to see more people sign up than our spots for. Like, I would like to see a lot of people want to do that job, that role. So, to be an RTM. And it might mean I wouldn't end up getting elected, but, I think it would be good for the town if a lot of people wanted to be in RTM.
Yeah. Questions?
I have a follow-up.
Yeah.
How would you accomplish such a thing from the Charter Commission?
I don't really know. We have the survey from before. People have given some clues.
I just wondered if you had an idea.
I would start from scratch. I don't know.
Daniel?
I'll just ask, would you consider reducing the number of RTM members to make it more of a contest?
I don't know. I mean, that's one of the answers, I suppose, but I mean, because it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing that this number of people are signing up that are signing up. I don't really know. I wouldn't rule that out. I don't know what the consequences of that would be.
Something to consider.
Yeah. Other follow-ups on the question? 2 follow-up questions on 1 answer.
Wow.
Pretty spicy. Daniel.
Millicent.
Yeah.
It's likely you will have disagreements with your fellow commissioners about ideas and process.
Yeah.
How would you handle that? If possible, give examples from your previous work.
So my career, I'm retired now, but my career for, let's say, the previous 20 years was I was a like director of user experience. My training was in, I guess you would say, human-centered design, but on large digital projects. And they always had different people who had different interests and values. And there was quite a bit of time pressure to arrive at a product design that could be done, that could be accomplished. And so you have people who are interested in profit, and you have people who are interested in the law, and you have people who are, like in my role, interested in, well, what do the people need and want? And all those things had to be sorted out to come up with a plan in a short amount of time. So, you know, there were techniques that we would use on teams and it was sometimes done with people in very, very diverse circumstances. So, for example, sometimes the thing to do would be to find out what everybody at the table actually agreed on. Because if you find out quickly what everybody agrees on already, even very divergent people agree on a few things, then you have more time to spend time listening to the things that people disagree on.
Great. Board, any follow-up questions? No. Millicent, do you have any questions for us?
I don't. You answered the ones that I came with.
Great. Excellent. Well,
Thank you.
you so much for your application, and we'll let you know next week.
Thank you.
Thanks. And so we come to our last candidate interview of the night, Spoon.
Oh, Spoon.
Thank you for your patience. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Lived in Brattleboro 33 years. And you have my resume. I've
Yep.
been on just about every committee, commission, and board known to Brattleboro. I think there was one I even left off. I was on the Traffic and Safety Committee. That's where I started. That was a good place to start.
Oh.
But so I've been interested in democracy and government and all the related things most of my life, and have spent a great deal of it reading, thinking, studying, in schools, learning. When I was appointed to the Planning Commission, the first thing the chair was Monroe Whitaker, and he was himself a professional planner. So I figured he would have a lot of books and a lot of education, and I went to Monroe at his office where he had most of his books, and I said, Monroe, get me started here. Hand me a book. I want to know about planning. And that's the way I approached I'll stop there. I don't want to use up too much time. I don't know how much more you want to know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, we're doing like 10 minutes in interview, so I appreciate that. Liz?
Hey, Spoon, what do you hope to accomplish by participating in the Town Charter Committee?
I would like to see a great deal more people participating in town affairs, and I think that means also to find out why they aren't. But and to see in what ways the charter itself can encourage that participation. Are there things in the charter, in the way we do things, that discourage people or turn people away? And so that'd be. I mean, what I'd like to accomplish, I would like to walk down the street and hear people say, "Boy, I've never lived in a town that felt so much like a community, like people, where so many people felt like they were a part of a community, of a town. And I think that the town charter, that's the social contract, the agreement we make about how to live here, is the key piece. That's our constitution.
Thank you.
Board, questions on answer?
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts? I mean, I know that you're a student of the charter. Do you have thoughts on how the charter could be amended to increase engagement?
1,000.
What's one?
Well, I don't know. It's I feel like it's. I just have to. I feel we have to work within the group. I think a lot of it is we have to look at the charter the way it is. There are a lot of issues, like in the last charter, and I think a major asset that I bring is the fact that I served on the last charter. I was the chair of the last charter, and that was pretty successful. We ended up being creating 33 recommendations and 24 passed. And there's probably a lot of things which you just take for granted of always being there that went in that new charter at that point, and have become a way of life. And for instance, we looked at, I don't know what people want to look at. We looked at maybe ranked voting. And I'll add at that point that I mentioned that one of the things I felt our charter really did well was, I think, an understanding that we really wanted to be well-informed. And before we started to do any work about what should go in or come out or be changed about the charter, we did a substantial period of explorations and interviewing. We gave a chance to everybody on the existing board to come in and share their experiences and their ideas and their suggestions. We went back to past. Most of us were around town for a while, and we knew who the people were that were pretty prominent in the past. Many of them were on the boards, and so we gave them a chance. We gave everybody a chance to come in and talk. We went to some of the department managers. When we talked about the ranked voting, we had the town clerk who was well-informed about voting, and we called down the state director of elections to talk to us. So we even went to the annual town managers convention or whatever it is up in the ski resort they rented, and we ran a workshop there, and turned out very lively, very successful. We were surprised that with all the things happening simultaneously, we got as many people as we did. And they were all town managers, and to come in and talk about town charters and their relationship to town government. So we did a lot of investigation. We had a volume on hand, the addendum to Title 24, which is that's the volume that contains all of the town charters in the state. So we could make references. Is what do other towns do? And what are things that they do? Not just what do they do like us, but what do they do differently? So I think there was a strong talk. There was a lot of talk at that point about should Brattleboro continue as a town town manager, with a town manager system or a mayoral system.
Yep.
And although it was pretty clear that that was not an overwhelmingly popular idea, nevertheless, we gave it its due, and we called down a couple of the mayors in the state. We called up here, we interviewed, we spent a session with the mayor of Greenfield, Mass, because they had just a few years before changed from a town manager like we had to a mayor. And asked me, and then of course, do you want, if you had a mayor, do you want a strong mayor, do you want a weak mayor, all sorts of things. So I guess what characterizes me is I really feel it can't be more important to have an enormous amount of information and a history. I went back and I rummaged through the town's files until I found the minutes, the notes, what there were of them, from the 1996 review, and I read through them, and what were they talking about, and what were they thinking, and what did they do, and why did they not do some of the things they taught. I even went to some of the people that were on that commission and sat with them for a while, and what were you doing, da-da-da-da-da. And so I studied the whole town history of charters, going back to the Urban Compact of 1927, I guess, when West Bratt and Bratt became, when the village became one town and a new charter was written. It was very interesting that the first town charter was really just a carryover from colonial days, and there wasn't really a Brattleboro town charter until 1853. And it was not updated until the first real revision wasn't until 1984. So just very, I find it very informative to go back and look at history and see, and that's what I also bring with me to this work. If you put me on this again, is I have all that history.
Any follow-up questions to that follow-up question? Case, Daniel?
Question 2. Spoon. It's likely you'll have disagreements with your fellow commissioners about ideas and process. How will you handle that? If possible, please give examples.
Well, I think the first thing is to start at the very outset, to have a discussion in the group about that subject. And what will we do? What are our expectations? How do we plan to handle disagreement? And I think one of the important things is to get an agreement to state, to keep on talking about what one means by what one says. And so that when a person makes a statement, when they say, I don't think that'll work, they need to be willing to say why. And they need, and we all need to find some evidence for things. We need to have reasons. And that has to be done without acrimony. A person should not feel like they're attacked because they're asked what they meant by what they said. And we were very lucky in the last Charter Commission, even though we ran the gamut from progressive to conservative. I think all of us, there were 9 of us. We actually started with 10. We ended up with 9. And we functioned very smoothly. And I think it was mostly because everybody in the room felt like we needed to be able to discuss and ask questions. And one way of trying to do that, we had maybe it was even that board, but we had it in the other room, in the Hannah Cosman room. And if we ran into controversy or something really complicated, and you know that right away. And so we begin to write on the board. When someone speaks, we write a few words. Is this what you meant? And that goes up, and it stays on the board where everybody in the room can continue to look at it, so it's not lost, it's not forgotten. Because in a discussion, especially in a long discussion, especially when there's a lot of people, by the time the 10th person has spoken, you forgot what the first 9 said. So you need to keep track. And the other advantage is when you have a scribe, as we say, and you don't need that all the time. The scribes they're listening to someone speak. They go up and they write in a few words what the idea they thought they heard. That gives the person that said that a chance to say, no, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. And that tends to clarify, and I guess maybe that's what I'm headed towards here, is always trying to feel like we have clarified what has been said. And as long as people feel that that's important, pretty good chance that the group is going to function very smoothly.
Thank you. Yeah. Any follow-up questions on the second answer?
Oh, thank you.
In that case, Spoon, do you have any questions for the board?
Other than, no, I don't. I just, I look forward to being there if you so choose, and I look forward to seeing each of you there with what you want. I mean, now you've all been on that board long enough to have seen some of the inherent problems. And it's, I hope you start writing your list, and that you bring them, because it's when it's a lot of our discussions were given more or less weight by how many people talked about it and how well they spoke of it, know, how effectively, and there was a lot. I mean, there were a lot of people who wanted the commission to reflect on a lot of things. So we spent a lot of time on whether the board should be 5 people or 7 people. On term limits. There was a lot of very interesting discussion, and this is what I can help to bring back on how does the effectiveness or the quality of a board change with terms? What is the importance of experience? What is the importance of wisdom? Of how do you pass wisdom along? And then in the moment, how do you keep? If you're talking about democracy, David mentioned that he was how vital it is that it's not just participating in a democracy. It's informed participation. And that's why that information, good quality information, is at the heart of the democratic process.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your application. And we will let all of the applicants know after our meeting on the 20th of December. And I think at this point, I'd just like to thank everyone for their applications, for participating. What's that?
Sorry. 1, 2, 3.
And for participating in this interview process. I think I can speak for the board when I say that that was very helpful and will help us immensely in making a good decision on who we're going to put in on this really important commission. So with that, I think I am going to make a motion. Board, I move that we enter into executive session to discuss the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee under provisions of Title I, Section 313A1A, and then invited into the executive session are interim town manager Patrick Moreland, and that is it. We're going to, because this is not a BCTV meeting, we're going to enter an executive session, and then we will exit executive session, and we will take no further action besides closing out the meeting. And with that, board, is there any discussion?
Nope.
I do want to say, I wasn't really sure whether we wanted to have Patrick in the meeting, in the executive session or not, so I'm inviting him in, but I'm open to have a conversation on that now.
If you want to be there, you're welcome.
You don't want him around.
We could always kick him out.
If you'd like
That's
to
true
be in the
too.
meeting, you're welcome.
Okay, I just wanted
Welcome
to
to
be,
go
I
home.
wasn't, this
Yes.
is kind of a newer thing, we don't do
Oh,
this
sure.
very often, so, in that case, board, all
Have
those,
any objection?
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that carries 5-0, okay, we're gonna go into executive session.
Hey.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Melissa.